Okay, welcome everyone to our GCEC webinar, Virtual Connections. This is, I guess, is our 36th webinar over the last 4 years. So uh, excited to see a lot of great folks here. Today, we're going to talk about how to launch a summer accelerator. My name is Jeff Reed. I'm the founder of the Georgetown University Entrepreneurship Initiative, and I have been a member of GCEC for more than 25 years when it was NCEC. And I encourage anyone watching this webinar who maybe is not familiar with GCEC to find a way to get involved. You know, we have an amazing annual conference coming up just a few weeks in Boston. We have webinars on a regular basis, awards programs, lots of ways to get involved. And it's just an amazing way to connect and learn from other entrepreneurship center leaders from all over the world. So I know that the work I do at my university is often not understood very well by my colleagues at Georgetown, but when I hang out with GCEC folks, it's a great way to connect with people who do get it, right? So this is our little support group, and certainly things like what we're going to do today are a great way to learn from each other. And here's the amazing panel we have set up for today. I'm going to let each one introduce themselves in more detail soon. And we're going to start with Tracy from the University of Hawaii. After Tracy will be Frank from NYU, and then Jessica from Rice. And I think there might be some of their colleagues joining when each one of them is speaking as well. So with that, I'm going to take down my screen and turn over to Tracy. So Tracy, over to you.
Can you all see my screen? I don't see. Of course, it's not working when I need it to work.
Yes,
we can see Sonoma.
Beautiful fields is what we're looking at.
Hi, Tracy. Do you want me to present for you? Oh, there you go.
There we go.
It.
We see your slides now.
You're muted. You're muted, Tracy.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. Aloha, everyone. I'm Tracy, and I'm being joined by Jeff Hui, who is our center's entrepreneur in residence, and he is also the instructor for our summer program. We are here and very excited to be presenting about our summer program. I want to say mahalo to Nadine, Holly, and Jeff for inviting us to participate. I know there are many centers with amazing summer programs, so we are humbled to talk about ours today. So we represent PACE for short. It's the Pacific Asian Center for Entrepreneurship at the University of Hawaii. And we call our summer program the Summer Startup Launchpad. Some of our basic goals are to extend the support for our teams that go through our venture competition that happens in the spring semester. So we found that before having a summer program, many of the teams who gained a little bit of traction in the venture competition will kind of fall off and lose steam and motivation. So we thought the summertime would be a great opportunity and time to lend the team some additional support and just extend the runway to them of the services that we provide. We also just want to teach the teams the lean startup methodology in a hands-on environment, which allows them to actually practice entrepreneurship. And then we want to build confidence in the students so that they feel that they can launch something new. So this graphic just kind of shows the different programs that we offer through the entire academic year. And it shows the support that we lend through our programs through the different stages of student startup development. And so you can see here that the Summer Startup Launchpad kind of falls in the middle, where we are really trying to assist teams who are building MVPs and starting to establish their go-to-market strategies. So we started our first Launchpad in 2017. We've been able to hold one annually since then. So we've worked with 8 cohorts in total. The pandemic didn't stop us. We were able to hold 2 online during COVID-19. We take in applications and we conduct interviews to help us select the teams. We select between 8 to 12 teams each year, and that's really just dependent on the types of teams that we are interviewing and seeing which teams can benefit from the summer program. It is a 6-week program that coincides with our university's summer session. And this is intentional because we know that some students want to take summer school. So this allows them the opportunity to still take summer school in our second summer session. We hold mandatory meetings. Typically, we ask the group to convene on campus twice a week. And in the interview, we are very clear that we expect each individual to put in about 30 hours of work per week, if not more. So we bring in an instructor. It happens to be Jeff Hui right now, who's doing an amazing job. He leads the cohort through lessons and examples, and he also provides customized guidance to each of the teams. We ask the teams to establish their own goals and to report on their progress every week. And we're able to engage our amazing community of volunteers as guest speakers to come in and talk on different topics like legal considerations about what types of business entities to form. And then we also try to connect our teams with mentors who have different areas of expertise. These are some of the triumphs that we have seen through the years of Launchpad. We have wonderful representation from many disciplines of study. So we see everything from art students, fashion majors, to all the engineerings and sciences on our campus. We see teams from every level of study. So we've had students who just graduated high school and are going to be incoming freshmen all the way to PhD level. We have a great diversity in teams and their ages and gender. So that's been great to see. And the end game for all of us is to see companies form. So that's been exciting for us to see happen every summer. And even if companies decide or the teams decide not to establish companies, we still see it as a win because we know that they are gaining the skills and the knowledge that they need to either pivot the idea they were working on during the Launchpad or perhaps pursue something new in the future. So I just pulled a couple of quotes. Whenever we see words like confidence and motivation, this just kind of validates the work that we're doing in the Launchpad and helps us to know that we're helping these students to get to the next level. And these are some of the actual teams that have participated through the years. And these teams specifically either registered their businesses at the end or immediately after the end of our summer program. And many of them are still running and operating their businesses today. And some of them have decided to do something else and have established new companies. So it's been really rewarding to see all of these businesses start and grow in Hawaii. So I try to divide them up in types of businesses that we see coming through. We have web-based, two-sided platforms, all types, retail, nonprofit, some in high tech and engineering. So super proud of all of these teams. Some of the changes that we see, we try to evolve the program as needed. So in the beginning years, it was required for participants to be in a team, but we are now considering admitting solopreneurs. in the beginning of the summer program, we also had a heavy focus on students working on their business models and with heavy emphasis on customer validation. But we are now kind of pivoting and focusing on students really building their MVPs and establishing their go-to-market strategies. We are really fortunate to have some funding to be able to give the teams who complete the program. So in past years, we would just give them cash awards for simply completing the program, but we are now thinking about doing different ways of awarding funding, which includes, we will give awards for teams that successfully complete the program, but we also want to give bonus awards kind of for teams who continue to develop their idea. So we have this additional follow-on funding with conditions. So really trying to award those teams who are continuing to develop their ideas and continuing to reach their own milestones. Some of the challenges that we see are keeping up their motivation through the program, of course, and not only that, but keeping up their motivation after they end the Launchpad. And I've talked about diversity in teams before, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult, and Jeff can speak to this, about to coach such a diverse group of companies and people. So that's been a little bit challenging, and then also being able to track them after graduation. So if anyone has any tips or advice about how we can meet these challenges, we'd love to hear them. I think that's it for us. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm excited to hear about what everyone else is doing in their summers.
But Tracy, this was great. Thank you so much for sharing that. I have one question for you now, and then we'll maybe have more towards the end of the session. You talked about the funding. I'm kind of curious, how do you decide on what type of funding, how much money is available for the teams? Yeah, just you mentioned you're thinking about doing it a different way. I'm curious to learn more about that.
Yeah, so we have been fortunate to have a donor that gifted us some money. So we're kind of working with a budget. In past years, we kind of rounded it out to $4,000 per team. This might be too specific, but $4,000 per team. And we kind of saw it as giving teams some money in lieu of getting a part-time job because of the hours that we're asking them to spend on working on their ideas. So we thought that maybe $2,000 per person might be a good amount for the teams. So yeah, we wanted to award them for just, sticking through the program, grinding through it for 6 weeks. And then in recent years, we found that, just because they're completing the program, some of them may decide not to continue, and we don't really know what they're doing with the money. So we've asked them to reach different milestones, and it depends on the team. So it might be something simple as registering your business with the state GCCA. Some of them we've asked to reach their own milestones, like one in particular is doing educational STEM kits. So we asked her to increase the number of schools that she is getting pledges from to order kits from her. So things like that, just to keep the students on track to meet their next milestones. And
That's
Jeff,
great.
I don't know if you want to jump in on how we decided to do some follow-on funding.
No, I think that was great. Maybe we'll have some time to dig in a little deeper after our other presenters. I'm glad you mentioned the kind of the stipend format. We did learn that too, that if you don't give the students at least some sort of stipend, then it limits the students who can participate, because they do essentially forego other summer employment options, right? They generally don't have student aid available for summer programs. So yeah, we had students living in their cars during the summer, and we found that out after the fact, and we realized that's not what we want to do. So we were able to raise some money for the same purpose. So thanks for answering that. Great. All right. So next up, and we'll have to, and I see there are some questions coming in on chat. Tracy, feel free to dive in there and engage as much as you'd like. And I do encourage our audience to continue to be active on the chat, and we'll ask questions of each panelist, and then towards the end, we'll do even more. Next up, from NYU, the Innovation Venture Fund and Entrepreneurial Institute, we have the executive director, star of Wolverine, Hugh Jackman. Over to you.
Oh, I haven't gotten that one, but I'll take that one. I can't quite sing like him, but I'll take it. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks, Tracy, for that. Actually, you're going to see there are actually a fair number of parallels between what Tracy just shared and what we're doing. I'll try to differentiate it to kind of help you understand, rather than just saying the same thing she did, to help you understand maybe how we got to where we are. So really quickly, the Entrepreneurial Institute, it started actually at NYU when I came to launch our venture fund 14 years ago, and realized the fund was necessary but not sufficient, and that kind of grew into the Entrepreneurial Institute that I lead today. We are still part of the Vice Provost of Research office, so we work with students, faculty, and researchers from every school and college at NYU. This is all we do all day, every day, which is providing the extracurricular training, mentorship, community, and funding to help founders start and scale their ventures. In the first few years, we were doing a lot of kind of one-on-one work and really didn't have a lot of programmatic structure. And I won't go through these. I'm sure a lot of you see these same epic blunders, as I like to call them, every day from your students. And in I guess it was 13 or 12, I forget now, I had the privilege of being one of the early NSF I-Corps instructors, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks that I kind of drank the lean startup Kool-Aid and thought that this would be a great framework and methodology to help our students. And so the initial idea, which we did, was to start our summer launch pad, funny enough. And this was a 10-week program over the summer, extracurricular. Being in New York City, we have an embarrassment of riches in terms of potential mentors and speakers. So we actively made that very, very much part of the program in support of what looked very similar, particularly in the first year, to the canonical Lean Launchpad curriculum that I'm sure lots of you are familiar with. We got something like 100 applications that first year. We interviewed probably about 25 teams and then picked the 10 that we thought were the best fit. And the first summer was a big success because it didn't blow up, and we actually helped the teams make a lot of progress. But I think I'll distill down the initial early lesson learned was, given that they weren't really coming from other programs beforehand, it was too little too late for too many teams, because most of them were just graduating or about to graduate from NYU. And in many cases, even though we had a few teams from the business school, I think we had maybe 6 different schools represented in that initial cohort, a couple of teams representing multiple schools. But this was really the first startup or business training for most of them. And perhaps no surprise, many of them had unrealistic expectations about how quickly they were going to get to revenue, if they were even thinking about that. And they all had unrealistic expectations about how soon they were going to be able to raise money. Most of them, if not all of them, really needed more bake time, in that all the magic didn't happen in our workshops, in our sessions, but they really needed time to kind of let what they were learning and hearing from their customers really, gel, and then take time to actually begin to build out the product and the business to mirror what they were learning in the marketplace. Also, many of them needed income after graduation, and so that became a forcing function for many of them to quit their startup early on. And then, kind of the meta point of all this, that starting this startup just as they were graduating was just too late to get started. So, we had this summer launchpad program, but I realized that, as I said, that it was too little too late. So we we kind of restructured things, and I wanted to try to get the teams to learn what they were learning in the summer launchpad earlier so that we could actually really help accelerate them on their way out of the university. So we took that 10-week summer launchpad program and crammed it into 2 weeks and created something called the Startup Sprint, and then turned the summer launchpad into something that was really more focused on customer validation and that an early customer acquisition. So it kind of shifted from figuring out the business model to actually the refinement and execution of that business model, with the goal being that by the end of the summer, they were all at a minimum doing pilots, if not generating revenue and acquiring customers. And then, even if not immediately, could see a path to a fundraising event downstream, if that made sense for that business. We do work with nonprofits as well, just to be clear. And then we figured something else out within maybe a year of that, was that even the sprint, which was highly selective, we would have about 15 teams in that. We came up with a 2-day version of that, essentially took the first 2 days of the sprint and made that a separate program that helped us start to create this kind of funnel that we now call the NYU Startup Accelerator. And so the funnel starts to look like this, where we'll run the boot camp 5 times a year. It's only 2 half days where they kind of get introduced to these crazy notions like customers and value propositions and customer discovery. We push them to do 5 to 10 interviews in 1 week between those 2 sessions. And they walk away with either the conviction in themselves and their idea, or they don't. And then those that do kind of have a natural follow-on in the sprint. The boot camp is a very low bar of entry. About half the teams get into that. Many of them get in on a second try. The sprint starts to get a little bit more selective. We run this twice a year now, only when classes aren't in session, because it's full-time and it's super intensive and immersive. Again, taking really that lean launchpad curriculum in 2 weeks, challenging them to do 35 to 50 interviews during those 2 weeks. And that's really where the magic starts to happen. So we'll get about 35 teams a year coming out of that. And then that feeds into the 8 to 12 teams that we'll have in our summer launchpad. So the summer launchpad program, it is for teams of 2 or more with at least 1 NYU student. Every one of them, without exception, has completed the startup sprint. We will occasionally let teams do the sprint without doing the boot camp if we really believe they get it, if they've learned about or figured out or took a class and learned how to do customer discovery, because we don't spend too much time kind of rehashing that in the sprint. It's more about actually doing it. The summer launchpad now lasts for about 9 weeks. We meet with them pretty much every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They have Mondays and Fridays to do the other work that they need to do, but we set the expectation that this is a full-time commitment. Other than 2 years during COVID, we do this in person at the Leslie E Lab, and the construct hasn't really changed all that much. We do a lot of feedback sessions, a lot of workshops and coaching, and then we connect them, every team, with 2 to 3 entrepreneur mentors, and then a mock investor board of directors comprised of venture capitalists to help facilitate them learning how to speak to investors in a way that is not constantly pitching. So there's no money changing hands, there's no fiduciary obligation, there's no ownership, but it's to try to begin to simulate that post-investor relationship with them. And since we added that about 5 years ago, people say almost uniformly that's the most valuable part of the program. And we also do Ask Me Anythings and demo days and things like that. New York's super expensive, so we do give them now, actually starting next year, it'll be a $15,000 grant that goes to the company. So they get pro bono legal support from one of our sponsors, Brown Rudnick, who gets them all incorporated. We do the grant over 3 milestones to make sure that they are all in on the program and meeting their obligations and expectations. They also get cloud computing credits from AWS. They sign a contract to be good boys and girls, and we give them 24/7 access to our space. So even when we're not here, and we feed them a lot of food. So with 12 cohorts behind us, we actually have a great track record of very successful ventures. I don't know how many of these you guys know, but several of these are doing revenue in the tens of millions to hundreds of millions of dollars already. Maybe Brooklinen might be the best known of these, which got their start in our second cohort in 2014. But the rate of teams continuing to work on these in the immediate year after is higher now than it used to be, for the reasons that we hoped it would, and so that's been super helpful. I'll wrap with some lessons learned here. We know, particularly at the boot camp stage, that the ideas don't really matter that much. The team, we're really making an investment in our time in these teams, but particularly as we get into Summer Launchpad, holding them accountable to milestones is really important. And they tell us that even though they kind of hate us in the middle of the program, they love us at the end of the program for doing that. It's all very experiential, though we're kind of in what seems like a classroom most of the time. It's really them presenting most of the time, and us giving them a lot of radical candor around that. The biggest insight, I think, was finding lightweight ways to engage these teams earlier. They all want to do Summer Launchpad because of the money and the access to the mentors and the investors. But finding those that really are coachable, that hustle, are creative, that can embrace the ambiguity of being an entrepreneur. It's a good way to avoid wasting time with the teams that frankly aren't going to follow through on that. And the boot camp's been a great kind of gateway drug for a lot of teams. We also make sure that our mentors take the same approach we do of really being Socratic and serving as coaches, not as consultants. So we don't want them making decisions for these young and very impressionable entrepreneurs who often look to them to make decisions, and we really advise them not to. And then the incentives matter. Incentives are the access to that human capital of our mentors and investors. They really want that. They want the money. They also want the food. So that helps keep them going as well. And then I think to one of the other points that Tracy made of providing that ongoing support. So we try to get the band back together once a month. Really, even though one of our team members is there, it's really them providing peer support to each other and a little bit of accountability. So I don't know how I'm doing on time, but I'm going to shut up there and pass the baton and look forward to seeing you in Boston. I'm actually going to be doing a talk about this exact topic and going into a lot more detail, but look forward to seeing you all there.
This is great. Thanks, Frank. I really appreciate all that. There's a lot of great stuff there. I appreciate you kind of shared some lessons learned there at the end. One thing I did want to ask, you mentioned that there was something that by far is the most valuable piece that your feedback is, but I missed what that was. Was it the mentors? Is that what or was it something different?
Well, the most valuable thing to me or to the teams?
Well, either one.
Well, so
I think you said you listed the things the teams got, and you said one of them is the favorite of the teams.
So it's that mock board of directors. So we pair up two investors, usually analysts and associate types, not super senior, sometimes principals, sometimes some partners. I mean, this is easier for us to do in New York City. I'm very cognizant of that. That's harder for some other schools to do. But they find that really, really valuable. It helps them both break down their fear of talking to investors. It gives them a network, and they really learn how to engage these people to help them and not just thinking about it as a transactional relationship. And that's been super, super valuable.
Excellent. All right. I got more things, but I'll save my other questions for the later part of our session here. Because we're going to switch back geographically. We started in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, went over to the East Coast. Now we're going to go to the middle of the United States, or close to the middle, relatively speaking, to Rice University out of Houston. I hope it's not too wet where you are. Over to Jessica Fleener from Rice Alliance.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me here today. Grab my slides. Make sure that's right. I have another screen running so I can tell. All right, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. This is also one of my favorite topics to talk about. I think Jeff mentioned that when we started. Probably because I spend a lot of my time working on this program, and then for the other part of that time I spend all my time working on I-Core. So I know I've got colleagues from the I-Core network across the US here, so hello to y'all as well. So I run the AlSpark Accelerator at Rice University. It is a program of the Rice Alliance for Technology and Entrepreneurship. And so we launched our program about 12 years ago now. Well, we just finished our 12th cohort. So the first program was launched in 2013. But I wanted to talk to y'all today a little bit about, like, I think you understand the benefits of acceleration, but the first 4 points on this, we really spend a lot of time hammering for our founders throughout the summer. And so I wanted to tell you kind of how we do this, a little more of almost a playbook. Because I think one of the most valuable things about GCEC is coming away with actionable items. And I wanted to be able to provide that to you all. So we got started in 2013. It was actually founded by a couple of students at Rice University. And fun fact, the Vivas and Veronica, the two founders, are actually now married. So AlSpark not only forges founder relationships, but real relationships as well. And so this is what our program looks like. It's not too different from what Tracy and Frank just described. So we have 12 weeks during the summer annually. So our first week, we do a lot of boot camp style workshops and goal setting. And then we spend the following weeks doing all of the entrepreneurial training. And so we also do take a mix of a little bit of the I-Core methodology, the Lean Launchpad, and then we pepper some other things in there as well to kind of do a deeper dive. But customer discovery is an emphasis in the very beginning of the program, and we do kind of touch on that throughout as they're building their business. We also spend those middle weeks in a lot of mentoring, and I'll tell you a little bit about how many hours and how we did that. And then we also have accountability meetings. So we require those once a week with our founders. They meet with our mentor and residents weekly. And then the last 2 weeks of the program, we prep for our demo day. And so each summer we hold this program on site in a local co-working space. And like Frank and Tracy, our emphasis really is on experiential learning, like going out and doing this, getting things done. You're going to learn by doing. And one of the unique things about our program, which is pretty common, I think, of university accelerators, but not as common with others, we don't take any equity. We don't invest in the companies in the program. We actually do give them a stipend, though. And something that's unique about our program is we have 2 tracks. So we actually focus on startups and small businesses. And so we had initially launched these programs separately. We started the small business track in 2022 to focus on non-tech enabled ventures. Because we were getting a lot of questions from these types of founders, like, what kind of support is there for me? What can we do? How can I do something like this? And so actually partnered with colleagues at University of Houston to launch that first cohort. So we did them separately for 2 years and then realized there's a lot of overlap between the two. There's obviously the nuances between things they need to know as a tech startup versus a small business. But we found that the blended cohort effect was actually much more powerful than running these programs separately. And then to that point, we do run our program alongside University of Houston. I think it's one of the most unique partnerships probably in this country for university accelerators. I think my colleague Liana Gonzalez is here today, so hello, thank you. So Liana and I have worked together for a number of years now, running our program side by side. Our founders have benefited so much from just our own partnership. Being able to expand our network, getting access to more resources, getting access to more topics, more speakers. This partnership was started in 2014 as sort of a, let's try to put them in each other's classes for a little bit, see how this happens. And it was so successful that the third cohort, this program went full-time together. And so we've been working with them ever since. So it's one of the things I think Houston is most proud of when they talk about the startup community here. So this is a quick snapshot of our program from the summer. We just concluded it a little over a month ago, 2 months ago almost. We had 18 ventures between the two programs, or between the two universities, 11 of which were small businesses and 7 were startups. We had 53 mentors, over 150 sessions, adding up to 282 hours. It was a lot, but it was so great. And then on top of that, they had 36 different speakers who came in to do 69 different sessions over 90 hours. So we kind of hit them really hard with a lot of learning and a lot of mentoring. And like Frank said, you know, they kind of hate you in the middle of it, but they're really grateful for it at the end. So for us in our program at Rice University, we admit students, faculty, staff, and alumni, as well as postdoc. Our alumni, we look at within 5-ish years, but that's kind of a loose, criteria. We're not really sure why that was put in place, but we sort of try to follow it. There is a point, I think, at which some people become too experienced for the things that we are teaching in AlSpark. But it is a really great program to step back into, even if you've been in industry for a while. Our teams are comprised of 1 to 5 founders. We do actually prefer that on the startup side, there's at least 2. They have a lot more work to do in terms of customer discovery and really fleshing out that business model. But we have not made it a requirement the last couple of years, and it has actually opened up the number of applications on the startup side and also the quality as well. At least one of our founders must be a Rice affiliate. And then we have some other criteria as well. But we say at least one founder must commit to this program on a full-time basis. I think that was my note about saying for 2. But we do find that the more people are engaged in this program full-time, the more they get out of it. We actually used to allow part-time founders, but we're finding that it's not as effective for them. They're missing key information, they're missing key mentoring sessions. So it's really hard to expect your team to catch you up when you're not there full-time. We also do allow international students in our program as well, because we do pay a stipend. So that's just an extra layer that they have to navigate in order to be in our program. We have a number of criteria that we look for, but I think the highlight here is not only the technology, but the team. Are these the right people to do it? Do they have that can-do attitude? Are they willing to listen? Are they going to listen to the feedback that your mentors are giving? Are they willing to be flexible and be coachable? Are they capable of doing this? Do they have the right skill set? There's a number of things that all of our programs offer. I think this probably isn't too different from what you just heard. So our core focus areas, though, are entrepreneurial training, mentorship and accountability, community and ecosystem. We spend a lot of time introducing them to the community and to the local entrepreneurship ecosystem. We also provide that stipend to help support them, because we do want to capture their attention and also kind of give them a carrot to keep them accountable throughout the program as well. There's a number of resources we offer, and then we conclude the program with a demo day. This is the questions at each stage of our training that we want the founders to be able to answer. So we build the session and curriculum around these key questions. So who's your customer, the value, how do they get your product, how do you make money, how do you design and build, how do you brand and market, how do you pitch, scale, and then we actually do have a session that goes pretty deep on what are all the different options for funding your business. And we don't just talk about venture capital or angel capital or investment. We talk about all the other grants and opportunities that are available to them, even as a non-tech startup. There's a number of deliverables and expectations that we have of them. So we actually do our program 3 to 5 days per week, depending on what the schedule is that week. They're required to attend everything in person, all the mentoring events, the weekly accountability meetings. They're required to set and report their own objectives and key results. We do a training with them on that very, very early on in the program. And that actually helps set the stage for the accountability meetings throughout the program. They are required to conduct customer interviews, build their brand identity, all the marketing materials they need. They're also required to pitch at organized events. mentorship and accountability. So we have a lot of different mentoring options. And we've tried a lot of different formats and mixed it all up and tried many different things over the years. So this year, Liana and I took an approach of let's try a hybrid option. We're going to do in-person and virtual. We're also going to do scheduled by us, so scheduled by the leadership team, but also give the founders a chance to schedule on their own as well. And we actually found that this was the most successful because in the past it's either been scheduled by us or scheduled by the founders, and that doesn't give them the chance to really build relationships with mentors because you're kind of only looking at it from one lens. Or if you leave all the scheduling up to them, they're not quite sure who to go to for what. And so this hybrid approach actually gives them a chance to, okay, I've met with this person. I know that they can help me with this. I'll probably go meet with them again. Or I see that this person has something that I think they can help me with, but I, as a leadership team member, don't quite know all of the things that they need. We try to anticipate and pair them with mentors that way, but we can't know everything. We also have one-on-one pitch mentoring. Those are the last weeks of the program. So we'll do those early on. We kind of phase it. So we focus on the content and then we focus on style delivery, pitch decks and all that in the later days. There's also this concept of peer mentoring. They learn the best from each other. And so we really try to implement, excuse me, we try to implement as much or as many opportunities for peer learning into the sessions that we do. And so we ask a lot of our speakers to build time for workshops and exercises. We also ask them to work together on certain things like pitch feedback. We'll pair them with each other and tell them, what did you just hear from that other person? And that's kind of a way for them to really get out of their own shell, but then also help to bond them as well. We have a number of mentor touch points. I want to emphasize the pre-program touch points. We do a lot of mentor outreach. And then we spend a significant time onboarding our mentors, which includes a virtual training. So this year was actually the first year that we did a full virtual training. And I'm still here today. The mentors actually went back and watched it. Because there were some that attended and then there were some that were not able to make our sessions. And I'm so glad that we did this because they got so much out of it and they understood what was expected of them and what exactly we were teaching and how they were pacing throughout the program. And then in the early part of the program, we do a founder mentor mixer. So the founders will introduce themselves to the mentors and then allow the magic to happen. And that's also a way for them to get introduced to the mentors, but also the mentors can figure out who they're working with. And then of course we have the virtual and in-person mentoring and pitch practice mentoring. We host an appreciation event for them after the program to say thank you so much. Like, we're so grateful for your time, your expertise, your guidance, and we try to stay connected. And we find that having more touch points has actually helped our mentors come back year after year. We have some mentors who have been involved from the very beginning, so they've been doing this a long time with all of us. Our weekly accountability meetings, I mentioned they're structured by the goals and objectives that are set in week 1. So they have an OKR spreadsheet that they have to enter data, enter information, or if there's specific goals they had set for themselves within this, they have to come with this information. And that's when we kind of talk through it. We figure out, hey, what do you need help with? Where are you stuck? Are you experiencing some barriers? How can we help you get through this? There's also an emphasis on the program goals I mentioned earlier. We have stuff like customer discovery. You are required to set up a website, other things like that. So this is another way for us to check and make sure that these things are actually getting done. And if they're not, how can we help? Our community and ecosystem. So this is just a sampling of the community that we have available to us at Rice University and University of Houston when we run Alspark and the University of Houston program as well. So we try to tap into these networks to help us run these programs. So I will call this informally, this is our village. And these are all the people that we have, so many more that don't even come from these networks and groups that do help plug in with us. Our founder stipend. So we used to do a part-time.
So Jessica, I'm going to jump in. And it looks like you got a lot more to go, but we're running out of time. So maybe you can finish out strong here.
Yeah, let me just I'll skip forward. If you're interested in the stipend, that's how we structured ours. I will go ahead to kind of our outcomes. I have a lot of this stuff packed in here, so y'all can have these things, our resources. We do offer a prototype fund, and then that gives them access to build the things that they're building. And then we also have access to the co-working space and legal office hours as well. And our demo day, so this is jointly hosted. We've done this for the same number of years that we have done our partnership together. I have a number of program outcomes listed here. So in the interest of time, I'll just let you all have this slide. Quick metrics. So we've had 12 cohorts. We've had 253 founders go through our program. You can see the different breakdowns of how we track information throughout the program before, during, after. And so I'm excited to say 41% of our ventures are still active today. 23% of them are funded, and they've raised 113 million in funding. This is our alumni. We start to see trends that about 3 to 5 years out is when they raise significant funding if they're on the tech startup side. And then I guess my key takeaways. So from me to you, every cohort is different. There's no one size fits all approach. So even summer to summer, our program varies. So don't be afraid to take a look at things, flip them on their head if you need to. It's all about really meeting what your customers need. And so we do a lot of time, we spend a lot of time listening to what they need. We kind of make some observations, but we also give them the floor at the end of the summer to say, hey, this was really, really helpful. I want more of this, or maybe we could have ratcheted back on that. The great thing about accelerators, you can scale them up or down depending on your resources. So what worked for us may not work for your center, but that's okay. I think that there's a lot of frameworks that you've heard today that are really helpful that you can take and start to build based on the resources that you have available to you. Go ahead and find your village. I talked a little bit about ours. They're everywhere. People are willing to help if you just ask. Bet and train your mentors and be explicit in expectations. The more the information and resources that you give them in order to help your founders, the more grateful they're going to be. And it's also going to help them really fine-tune their feedback and better guide your founders. So I will leave that. I'm so sorry for going over time, but it's a big topic for me. Thank you all.
Thanks so much, Jessica. A lot of great stuff there. I appreciate that. So I got a couple questions, and I guess you can dive in, or any of our panelists can dive in. And I'll start with the duration, right? I think we had an 8-week, a 9-week, a 12-week program here presented. I can tell you at our school, we started with a summer long, and in recent years, we've shortened it to basically be half the summer. And a couple of reasons we did that were some of the students figure out partway through that it's not the right business fit. And so it's easy to give them a graceful exit. Those that do want to continue, there's kind of a part 2 option. So we don't just leave them hanging. And so anyway, I just wonder if you guys have thought about, Jessica, you just mentioned the scalability and shrinkability depending on resources. Have you guys thought, is there a reason why you chose the length you did? And is there other options that you have considered or would recommend others consider? And any one of our panelists can jump in.
Yeah, I guess for us, I mean, I've heard about 6-week, 9-week, 12-week programs. I personally do not feel we could accomplish what we accomplish in less than 12 weeks. It's almost as if we don't have enough time. But I do think that if you are going to work on scalability, if you're going to try something that's a little bit shorter, I would go the route that Frank took and start earlier with the teams. We actually source some of our teams from the ICOR program, the regional level programs, and then other various things throughout the Rice campus. I think if you put more emphasis on starting earlier, it would be a little bit easier to scale your program back to 6 weeks. I think if you're looking to plan a demo day of the size that we do, it may not be possible because there's just so much prep work that goes into that, and it actually takes almost the last quarter of the program to do that.
So we do our program the way we do for some obvious reasons, being that it's really, you can think of it as it's really more like a 12-week program when you factor in the boot camp and the sprint. They're just spread out over a lot more time. We also do it that way for logistical reasons, because we run a sprint right after commencement, and we want to give both ourselves and our teams a break before we start Summer Launchpad. And then it selfishly is so that we can take 2 weeks off before classes start again. or before the new students come in. So that's kind of how we ended up there. I'm happy to say that we're not having teams bail halfway through anymore. If they're bailing on their startup, they're doing it much early in one of the precedent programs.
Awesome. All right. I got another question. This is again for any of our panelists. I think all of you mentioned a mix of kind of cohort level training, which I assume, but correct me if I'm wrong, is some of that at least might be like a classroom type training on different topics. And then there's also mixed in with mentors and coaches who give individual attention. There's this constant tension in entrepreneurship education, especially when you're working with real aspiring startups, is the cohort versus individual resource model. Like they learn and benefit from being in the room together, but then every one of them kind of has different needs too. Any lessons on how you've balanced that, right? The mentor individualized attention versus kind of cohort classroom training.
Well, I'll jump in and say that we do cohort-based training. We do one-on-one coaching between myself, members of my team, and the teams we support. And then there's also the interactions they have with the mentors. And we are intentionally kind of encouraging that chaos because that's the reality that they're going to have to face. And the one-on-one interactions with us are maybe the best time for them to help unpack that chaos and make sense of it all. But I think if they were hearing the same thing I know this is kind of a rhetorical question from you, Jeff, but I think that would not necessarily help them if they were hearing the same thing all the time, because in the real world they're going to deal with a lot of ambiguity and inconsistent.
I mean, another way to describe it is, we have a mix of students in our program, which I think some of you said too, right? We might have MBA students who have maybe taken a lot of courses already on entrepreneurship, whereas some of the other participants in our summer launch may have had zero content before. So we try to mix that balance, right?
Yep, same. So though I do find the MBA students may be more buzzword compliant, but they don't necessarily get customer discovery and experimentation any better than anybody else. Sometimes the engineers actually get that part of it better, even though they may not understand the business concepts as much. So it's always interesting to see what the different teams are bringing to the cohort.
I will add, the MBA students always like to tell me, I've already had this, I did it in my classes, I don't need to take this. So I try to frame it as, hey, take this as an audit, make sure that all of these things that you had, all these assumptions you've already formed about your business and that you have validated. I say that loosely because they really haven't spent a ton of time doing that. Take the time to audit it, make sure it's bulletproof. And they seem to respond to that a little bit better. And then I also, Jeff, to your point, I try to say, well, maybe this is an opportunity for you to help your peers who have not done this before.
Yeah, that's great. And we've kicked people out or not selected them before if we were able to figure out in advance that they thought they knew everything already, right? If they came to us with, we don't need this, all we want is for you to put us in front of investors, then we've essentially said, this isn't the right fit for you.
Actually, and sometimes, full disclosure, we figure that out halfway through the cohort, and that's why we do the milestone-based funding. So I don't like doing it, but I would say almost every year there's at least the conversation about, are we going to withhold funding from at least one team? And we have done it a handful of times over the 12 years because they were only there because they wanted access to the investors or something like that.
Yeah,
And they were mailing it in.
Yeah, this is Jeff from UH Manoa, Tracy's partner. One thing different for us is that we do receive a heavy emphasis from our undergrad population on wanting a more structured approach. So actually one change that we made this year was to go a little bit heavier into the more structured topics and doing weekly topics from customer discovery all the way through go-to-market. And it lightened up the mentorship a little bit because I felt like we were in the past heavy on mentorship. And what I heard from the students is they wanted an actual kind of like guidebook to follow along the way. Of course, I do feel like that's a little bit more the feedback from the undergrads.
Awesome. Well, this is great. I got a lot more questions I could ask, but unfortunately we are out of time. I want to thank Jessica, Tracy, Jeff, who jumped in there, as well as Frank. Thank you all for sharing your programs. I know some of you will be presenting these topics again at the conference in Boston, and the video and slides from today's session will be posted on the GCEC website. So this is a great way for people to continue to learn more. Congrats on the work you guys are doing with your summer launch programs. I will now turn over to Holly DeArmond, the wonderful leader of the GCEC, and she'll help close us out here. Over to you, Holly. You're muted, Holly.
Of course I'm muted. I was trying to move too quickly, but thanks, Jeff, for moderating the session, and to Frank and Jessica, Tracy, and Jeff also from Hawaii for joining us today. And just a promo for our annual conference. It's fast approaching. But what these webinars do throughout the years, they give you sort of a bite-sized information and best practices on the topics and the programs that we run. But the conference, we dive a little bit deeper because we have the time. And like Frank said, there's even going to be a session, a deep dive session on his Accelerator program during the conference. So please scan our QR code if you haven't registered already. We have 90+ breakout sessions. We have some fun excursions on Thursday lined up, and then we'll also spend Friday evening at Fenway Park. Also, for anyone on the virtual webinars, we have our new Slack channel. It launched in January, so it's not as new anymore, and it's for paid members of the GCEC, but also anyone who attends our virtual connection sessions. So later this afternoon, you'll get an email from me with the invitation link for you to join. So I hope you'll network and collaborate there on our GCEC Slack. And thank you all for being here today. Jeff?
I got nothing
Thanks,
else.
yeah.
Thanks,
Yep.
everybody. We'll see you in Boston or on the next webinar. And thanks again to our panelists.
Thank you, guys.